Jake Morrison sat in the huge chamber of the Galactic Council. The room was so big that his voice would echo if he spoke too loud. Around him sat creatures from hundreds of different worlds. Some had fur, others had scales. Some breathed oxygen. Like humans, others wore special masks to survive in this air. The Zalarian delegate was speaking again. His name was something Jake could not say properly, so he just called him Six Fingers in his head. Six Fingers had 6 fingers on each hand and green skin that looked like old leather. He was talking about why humans should not be allowed to build new colonies in the outer rim of the galaxy. The human species shows too much aggression, Six Fingers said. His voice made a hissing sound when he spoke. They fight too much. They cannot be trusted with more territory. Jake felt his jaw tighten. This was the 15th time in 3 months that the Council had said no to human expansion. Every time they used the same excuse. Humans were too violent. Humans were too unpredictable. Humans could not be trusted. It had been 50 years since humans first joined the Galactic Council. Back then, humanity was excited. They thought they would be equal partners with all these alien species. They thought they would share knowledge and build a better future together. Jake remembered the stories his grandfather told him. His grandfather had been there when the first council ships arrived at Earth. The aliens had seemed so advanced, so wise. They promised that all species in the council were equal. They promised fair treatment and protection. What humans got instead was very different. The council treated humans like children who could not take care of themselves. They gave humans old technology while keeping the good stuff for themselves. When humans wanted to explore new star systems, the Council said no. When humans asked for help defending their colonies, the Council was always too busy. But when other species had problems, help came quickly. Last year, the Thraxians had faced attacks from space pirates. Council peacekeeping ships arrived within hours. They drove off the attackers and set up permanent patrols to keep the Thraxian worlds safe. This year, human colonies in the Kepler system were under attack by the same pirates. Jake had sent 17 requests for help. Each time, the Council said they were studying the situation or working on a solution. The attacks continued for months while the Council did nothing. The worst part was how they talked to him. 6 fingers. And the others spoke to Jake like he was stupid. They used simple words and spoke slowly, as if he could not understand complex ideas. Sometimes they would make jokes about humans when they thought Jake was not listening. The Andromedans were the worst. They were tall, thin creatures with silver skin and large black eyes. They thought they were smarter than everyone else because their civilization was older. Counselor Vexithara was their leader on the council. She never looked at Jake when she spoke. She acted like humans were not worth her attention. Today was different, though. Today, Vexithara had a new plan for dealing with the human problem. She stood up from her floating chair. The Andromedans did not use regular seats like most species. They preferred to float a few inches above the ground. Jake thought it was just another way for them to show off. "I propose Resolution 2847, Vexithara said. Her voice was cold and sharp. All human colonies beyond the core systems must be relocated to the galactic rim. This will reduce tensions and provide humans with plenty of space to expand without bothering other species. Jake felt his blood run cold. The galactic rim was a wasteland. There were no good planets there, no resources, no trade routes. It was where the Council sent species they wanted to forget about. The debate that followed was a joke. A few smaller species spoke against the resolution, but their voices did not matter. The big powers had already made their decision. The Centaurians voted yes. The Thraxians voted yes. The hegemony worlds all voted yes. One by one, the votes piled up in favor of human exile. Jake watched it happen like a bad dream. 5 decades of trying to be good partners meant nothing. All the times humans had helped other species meant nothing. all the resources humans had. Shared meant nothing. The final vote was 634 in favor, 213 against. Most of the species that voted against were small and weak. They knew they might be next if they made the big powers angry. Some species did not vote at all. They were too scared to say yes, but too scared to say no. When the vote was finished, the chamber filled with noise. Delegates talked excitedly about the new resolution. Some seemed happy to be rid of the troublesome humans. Others looked worried about what this might mean for them. Jake sat quietly for a long moment. He thought about his grandfather who had believed in the council's promises. He thought about all the human diplomats who had come before him, trying so hard to fit in and be accepted. He thought about Captain Lisa Rodriguez and her crew, patrolling dangerous space to protect human colonies while the council refused to help. He thought about the families on those colonies, wondering if anyone cared whether they lived or died. Slowly, Jake stood up. The chamber grew quiet as delegates noticed him moving. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his diplomatic credentials. The small device contained all of his authority as Earth's representative to the council. He set the credentials down on the podium in front of him. The soft click of metal on stone seemed very loud in the silent chamber. The Terran Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, Jake said. His voice was calm and steady. We came here 50 years ago seeking partnership. Instead, we found only prejudice and contempt. We came offering friendship and cooperation. Instead, we received mockery and exile. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of different languages. Some seemed shocked, others seemed angry. A few seemed pleased that the humans were finally leaving. Jake continued speaking over the noise. Humanity will remember this day. We will remember who stood with us and who stood against us. We will remember every insult, every broken promise, every time you treated us as less than equal. Six Fingers jumped up from his seat. You cannot do this! You need the council! Your species is too primitive to survive alone! Jake looked at him with cold eyes. We survived for thousands of years before we met you. We will survive long after you are forgotten. Vexathara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is exactly the kind of aggression we warned you about. This proves that humans cannot be trusted. Trust? Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about trust? You promised us equality and gave us scraps. You promised us protection and left us to fight alone. You promised us partnership and tried to exile us to the rim. He picked up his credentials and put them back in his pocket. The age of human begging is over. From now on, humanity stands alone. And you will learn what that really means. Jake turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. As he reached the door, he stopped and looked back one last time. You made one mistake, he said. You thought we were weak because we followed your rules. You thought we were helpless because we asked for your help. You thought we were primitive because we tried to fit into your system. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. You were wrong about all of it. Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. Behind him, chaos erupted as delegates tried to figure out what had just happened. Most of them thought it was just humans throwing a tantrum. After all, what could one small species do against 846 others? They would find out soon enough. President Elena Martinez stood at the podium in the Terran Federation Parliament building. The huge room was packed with representatives from every human world. News cameras recorded everything for broadcast across human space. The vote had been unanimous. All 847 representatives voted to withdraw from every treaty, trade agreement, and diplomatic relationship with the Galactic Council. For the first time in 50 years, humanity would stand completely alone among the stars. Elena had expected some debate. Some representatives might worry about trade or defense, but the anger ran too deep. Every human world had stories of council prejudice and broken promises. Every family had heard about the attacks on human colonies while the council did nothing. Today, we reclaim our destiny, Elena said into the cameras. For 50 years, we tried to be what they wanted us to be. We followed their rules. We accepted their limitations. We begged for scraps from their table. She paused and looked around the chamber. No more. From this day forward, humanity will make its own path among the stars. The applause was thunderous. But Elena knew that words were not enough. The real work was just beginning. Admiral Connor Blake was already implementing Protocol 7 before. The president finished speaking. Few people knew about Protocol 7. It was a plan that had been developed in secret over the past 20 years as relations with the council got worse and worse. The plan was simple. If humanity ever had to leave the council, they would be ready. Hidden shipyards throughout human space roared to life. These were not the small facilities the council knew about. These were massive construction centers built inside asteroids and hidden moons. For decades, they had been working in secret, building ships that the council had never seen. The council thought they knew everything about human military strength. They had visited human shipyards and counted human warships. They thought humanity had maybe 200 combat vessels spread across 50 star systems. They were wrong by a factor of 10. Captain Lisa Rodriguez received new orders while her ship patrolled the Kepler system. Instead of the old UES Defiance, she now commanded the UES Liberty, a ship that officially did not exist. It was twice as large as her old vessel and packed with weapons that pushed the limits of known physics. All ships, form up on my position, Lisa ordered. It's time to show our neighbors what we're really made of. 36 ships appeared on her sensors. A month ago, there had been only 4 human vessels in the entire Kepler system. Now there was a full battle fleet, and every ship was brand new. The Thraxian pirates, who had been attacking human colonies for months, suddenly found themselves facing something very different. Instead of desperate colonists calling for help, they faced warships that could match their best vessels. The first engagement lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 15 Thraxian pirate ships were destroyed or captured. Not a single human vessel was even damaged. Word spread quickly through the criminal networks. Attacking human colonies was no longer easy money. It was suicide. Dr. Susan Grant walked through the corridors of the Prometheus Research Station. For 30 years, she had watched her best discoveries locked away by council regulations. Advanced computers were too dangerous for younger species. New propulsion systems were restricted pending security review. Weapons research was forbidden for the sake of galactic peace. All of those restrictions had just been lifted. Her research teams were already unsealing projects that had been gathering dust for decades. Faster-than-light communication systems that could connect human worlds instantly. Quantum computers that could solve problems in seconds that would take council machines years. Medical technology that could heal injuries the council considered fatal. The most important project was the one Dr. Grant had never been allowed to even mention to the council. The quantum consciousness interface allowed human pilots to connect directly with their ship's computer systems. Instead of just flying a vessel, they became part of it. Their reaction time increased by a factor of 50. Their situational awareness expanded to cover entire star systems. The technology only worked with human brain patterns. Dr. Grant's team had tried for years to adapt it for other species, but something about human neural chemistry was unique. It was as if evolution had prepared humans for this exact breakthrough. Now that the council restrictions were gone, every human pilot could be enhanced. The small human fleet would suddenly become the most effective fighting force in the galaxy. Trade. Overseer Kilnoth of the Centaurian hegemony was not worried about the human tantrum. He sat in his office on Centauri Prime and reviewed economic projections. Without council trade agreements, the human economy would collapse within a year, maybe 2 years at most. They'll come crawling back, he told his assistant. Humans are emotional creatures. They make decisions with their hearts instead of their heads. When their children start starving, they'll remember why they need the council. But the reports coming to his desk told a different story. Human trade ships were still moving between star systems. Human colonies were still receiving supplies. If anything, economic activity in human space seemed to be increasing. More disturbing were the reports of unknown human vessels. Ships that did not match any design in the Council databases were appearing throughout the galaxy. They moved with purpose and seemed to know exactly where they were going. The first real shock came when the Zalarian survey ship Eternal Wisdom encountered a human fleet in the Vega system. The Vega system was supposed to be empty. It was just another star with no planets worth colonizing, but the humans were building something there. The Eternal Wisdom's sensors detected massive construction efforts throughout the system. Artificial structures the size of small moons were taking shape around the star itself. When the Zalarians tried to get closer for a better look, human ships moved to intercept them. The aliens were not attacked. The humans were polite and professional. They simply explained that Vega was now sovereign human territory and suggested the Zalarians find somewhere else to conduct their survey. The Eternal Wisdom's captain was confused. Humans had never claimed the Vega system before. According to Council records, they had never even visited it. How long had humans been working there in secret? Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. Human activity was detected in star systems that were supposed to be unexplored. Ancient Council. Monitoring stations went silent without explanation. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries suddenly became dangerous for non-human ships. Within 6 months, humanity had somehow established a 50-light-year exclusion zone around their core worlds. No alien ship could enter without permission. Any vessel that tried was escorted away by human patrols. The most shocking discovery came from the intelligence services. Human traders, who had been traveling throughout Council space for decades, turned out to be something else entirely. Their cargo ships were actually advanced reconnaissance vessels. Their crews had been mapping every military installation, recording every hyperspace route, and studying every weakness in Council defenses. Human colonists on border worlds had been establishing supply caches and communication networks. Even the human diplomats had been intelligence agents, gathering information about Council politics and military capabilities. For 50 years, while the Council treated humans like primitive children, humanity had been preparing for this exact moment. Captain Rodriguez led her fleet to the edge of Thraxian space. The same species that had refused to stop their pirates from attacking human colonies now begged the Council for protection from human retaliation. But the Council's response was slow and bureaucratic. Committee hearings had to be held. Environmental impact studies had to be completed. The same red tape that had protected the Thraxians for decades now worked against them. Lisa's orders were simple. Destroy any Thraxian military vessel that entered human space, escort any Thraxian civilian ship to the border, and politely ask them not to return. Use minimum necessary force, but make the message clear. The Thraxians got the message quickly. Within weeks, they were offering to pay reparations for the damage their pirates had caused. They wanted to negotiate a new peace treaty directly with humanity, bypassing the Council entirely. Other species took notice. If humans could force the Thraxians to the negotiating table, what else could they do? The old order was beginning to crack. For the first time in galactic history, a species had successfully defied the Council and made it stick. Humanity had not just left the Council, they had proven that the Council was not all-powerful. Small species throughout the galaxy began to wonder. If humans could stand alone, maybe they could too. The age of Council dominance was ending, and everyone knew it. Admiral Zorketh of the Hegemony Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the tactical display. 2,000 ships spread out before him in perfect formation. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Tal. Council had finally decided to deal with the human problem once and for all. Months of human defiance had made them look weak. Smaller species were starting to ask uncomfortable questions about Council authority. Some were even talking about leaving to join the humans. That could not be allowed to happen. Zorketh was a veteran of dozens of campaigns. He had put down rebellions and enforced Council law across the galaxy for over 40 years. No species had ever resisted him for long. Humans would be no different. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump. His communications officer announced. Excellent, Zorketh replied. Set course for Sol system. It's time to remind humanity of their place in the galaxy. The massive fleet disappeared into hyperspace. Their destination was Earth itself, the heart of human civilization. When humans saw 2,000 warships in their home system, they would surrender immediately. At least, that was the plan. Commander Rick Hayes was aboard the UES Liberty when the Council fleet arrived. He had been expecting this moment for months. Intelligence reports had tracked the Council fleet's movements as it gathered ships from across the galaxy. Humanity was ready. Contact Admiral Blake, Rick ordered. Tell him the guests have arrived. The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in a formation designed to intimidate. 2,000 ships arranged in perfect rows, their weapons powered and shields raised. It was a sight that had made countless species surrender without a fight. But as the Council sensors scanned the system, Admiral Zorketh realized something was wrong. Sol system should have been lightly defended. According to Council intelligence, humans had fewer than 50 warships protecting their home system. The Council fleet outnumbered them 40-1. Instead, Zorketh's sensors detected over 800 human vessels. Ships that had never been seen before were emerging from hidden bases throughout the system. Some were larger than anything in the Council databases. Others moved with impossible speed and agility. Where did all these ships come from? Zorketh demanded. His intelligence officer checked his files frantically. Sir, most of these vessels don't match any known human designs. They're using energy signatures we've never encountered. The human fleet moved to intercept the Council armada. Instead of the desperate last stand Zorketh expected, the humans advanced with confidence and precision. The battle began when a Council destroyer fired a warning shot across the bow of a human frigate. The human response was immediate and devastating. Beams of energy that looked like solid light carved through the destroyer's shields as if they weren't there. The ship's armor, which should have taken minutes to breach, melted like ice under a blowtorch. The destroyer exploded in seconds. All ships, engage the enemy, Zorketh shouted. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. Human weapons cut through Council ships like a knife through paper. Energy beams that should have been impossible struck with perfect accuracy across impossible distances. Missiles that moved faster than anything the Council had ever seen found their targets no matter how the alien ships tried to evade. But the most terrifying thing was the human fighters. Council pilots were good. They trained for years and had experience fighting many different enemies. But the human pilots moved like they could see the future. They dodged attacks that hadn't been fired yet. They struck at weak points that shouldn't have been visible to their sensors. It was as if they weren't just flying their ships, but had become part of them. Commander Hayes guided his fighter through a formation of Council cruisers. His consciousness was linked directly to his ship's systems through the quantum interface. He could feel every bolt and rivet, sense every energy flow, predict every movement. Time seemed to slow down. Enemy fire moved like slow-motion meteors that he could easily avoid. His own weapons found targets with perfect precision. In 12 minutes of combat, he destroyed 7 enemy fighters and disabled 2 capital ships. All around him, other human pilots were performing similar feats. The Council pilots, no matter how skilled, simply could not compete. Admiral Zorketh watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had served the Council for decades were being destroyed faster than his sensors could track. His 2,000 ship armada was falling apart. "Retreat!" he ordered. "All ships, retreat immediately!" Those council ships that could still move fled toward the hyperspace jump point. Behind them, the human fleet pursued relentlessly. Ships that tried to fight were destroyed. Ships that tried to run were allowed to escape, but just barely. Of the 2,000 ships that had entered Sol's system, fewer than 300 made it out. The news of the Battle of Sol spread across the galaxy at light speed. For the first time in Council history, their military had been completely defeated. The species they had dismissed as primitive and aggressive had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled. But the real shock came when the intelligence reports started arriving. Human trade ships that the Council had ignored for decades turned out to be advanced spy vessels. Their crews had been mapping every important military base and recording every hyperspace route. Human colonists on border worlds had been setting up supply depots and communication networks. Even human diplomats had been gathering intelligence about Council weaknesses. For 50 years, while the Council had treated humans like children, humanity had been preparing for war. Dr. Susan Grant's research teams chose this moment to reveal their greatest secret. The quantum consciousness interface was not just advanced technology. It was a revolution in how beings could interact with machines. Human pilots didn't just fly their ships. They became one with them. Their minds merged with the ship's computer systems, creating a hybrid consciousness that could process information and react to threats faster than any biological brain. The technology was uniquely compatible with human neural patterns. Dr. Grant's teams had tried for years to adapt it for other species, but human brain chemistry was different. Evolution had given humanity something that no other known species possessed. Council President Yalthor called an emergency session, but only half the delegates showed up. The smaller species were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. If humans could hide such advanced technology for 50 years, what did that say about Council intelligence services? Worse, if humans could defeat the Council fleet so easily, what protection could the Council really offer? The panic began when long-range sensors detected massive human construction projects throughout the galaxy. Not just military bases, but entire artificial worlds, resource extraction operations that dwarfed anything in Council space, energy collectors that drew power directly from stars. Humanity had not just been preparing for war, they had been building the infrastructure to replace the Council entirely. Trade routes that had connected Council worlds for centuries suddenly became dangerous for non-human ships. Human patrol vessels appeared without warning and demanded payment for passage through what they claimed was sovereign human territory. The routes themselves had not changed, but human control over them had suddenly become absolute. Species that had relied on Council protection found themselves cut off from vital resources. Medical supplies couldn't reach outer colonies. Raw materials couldn't reach manufacturing centers. The galactic economy began to strangle. Captain Nicole Stevens commanded the human blockade at the Rigel Junction, one of the most important hyperspace crossroads in the galaxy. When a Centaurian convoy carrying medical supplies tried to pass through, she politely turned them away. "You're welcome to use this route," she explained to the convoy commander. "But there's a transit fee. Standard rate is 100 credits, per ship, per passage." The Centaurian captain was outraged. "This is free space. No one owns hyperspace routes." Nicole smiled. "Free space is wherever we say it is. You can pay the fee, find another route, or go home. Your choice." The alternative route would add 6 weeks to the journey. The medical supplies had a 2-week shelf life. The Centaurians paid the fee. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as humanity flexed its newfound power. The species that had spent 50 years treating humans as inferiors suddenly found themselves begging for permission to use routes they had taken for granted. The old order was crumbling, and everyone could see it. The Council that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was being replaced by a species they had tried to exile just 1 year earlier. The age of human dominance had begun. President Elena Martinez stood before the most advanced communication array ever built. The quantum broadcast system could reach every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. For the first time in galactic history, someone other than the Council would address all species directly. "People of the galaxy," she began, her words traveling instantly across millions of light years. "For thousands of years, you have been told that the Council represents order and peace. You have been taught that their way is the only way. The broadcast bypassed every Council communication network. There was no way for them to stop it or control the message. Today, I offer you a different path. Humanity extends an invitation to all species who believe in true equality, fair trade, and mutual respect. We offer partnership to those willing to earn it through merit rather than demand it through force." On hundreds of worlds, people gathered around screens to hear something no one had ever heard before: an alternative to Council rule. "Those who prefer the old system of corruption and oppression are welcome to it," Elena continued. "But they will do so without human participation, without human resources, and without access to human space." The message was clear. The galaxy now had two choices: join humanity's growing alliance or remain with the dying Council. Captain Nicole Stevens watched from her command ship as another Council convoy approached the Rigel Junction. This one was different. Instead of merchant vessels carrying trade goods, these were military transports filled with weapons and soldiers. "Unknown human vessel," the convoy commander transmitted. "You are interfering with official Council business. Stand down immediately." Nicole checked her tactical display. 12 Council warships escorted the convoy. Against her single cruiser, they probably expected an easy victory. They were about to learn why the Battle of Sol had been such a shock. "Council convoy, you are entering sovereign human territory without permission," Nicole replied calmly. "Turn around now or face the consequences." "We do not recognize human territorial claims," the Council commander shot back. "Prepare to be boarded." The Council ships opened fire. Their weapons, designed to impress primitive species into submission, struck Nicole's shields with tremendous force. The energy discharges lit up space like miniature stars. Nicole's ship didn't even shake. "Your turn," she said quietly. The return fire from the human cruiser was unlike anything the Council ships had ever faced. Beams of coherent energy punched through their shields and armor as if they were made of paper. In 30 seconds, 6 Council warships were drifting wrecks. The surviving ships fled immediately. Word of the engagement spread quickly through military channels. A single human ship had defeated 12 Council warships without taking any damage. Either the reports were exaggerated, or humanity possessed technology that made Council fleets obsolete. Both possibilities were terrifying. Admiral Connor Blake's fleets moved with surgical precision throughout the galaxy. Their targets were not civilian populations, but the foundations of Council power itself. Hyperspace communication hubs that had connected Council worlds for millennia went dark without warning. Military installations found their defensive systems failing at critical moments. Shipyards suffered mysterious accidents that destroyed production capabilities while leaving workers unharmed. The attacks were too precise to be random. Someone, with detailed knowledge of Council infrastructure, was directing them. Dr. Susan Grant's intelligence teams chose this moment to reveal the full scope of their operations. For 5 decades, human agents had infiltrated every level of Council society. They had maps of every military base, copies of every classified document, and recordings of every secret meeting. The information they released shook the galaxy to its core. Counselor Vexithara, the Andromedan who had proposed human exile, found her private communications broadcast across her home worlds. The population learned how their resources had been diverted to Council coffers while their own needs were ignored. They discovered that wars they thought were defensive had actually been started to seize territory and resources. Six Fingers, the Zalarian delegate who had so often spoken against human expansion, was revealed to have been taking bribes from mining corporations to keep valuable systems off limits to competitors. The bribes were deposited in secret accounts while Zalarian colonies struggled with resource shortages. Trade overseer Kil Noth of the Centaurian hegemony saw his career destroyed when recordings surfaced of him arranging deals that enriched his family while bankrupting entire worlds. But the most devastating revelations concerned the Council's treatment of smaller species. Border disputes that had lasted for decades were revealed to have been artificially maintained by Council agents. Species that should have been allies were kept fighting each other to prevent them from challenging Council authority. Resource extraction rights were granted to species that paid the highest bribes, regardless of the environmental damage or local opposition. Military protection was provided based on political loyalty rather than actual need. The Thraxian raids on human colonies had been allowed to continue because some Council members thought it would teach humanity to be more dependent. On Council protection, species across the galaxy read these revelations and realized they had been played for fools. The organization they had trusted to protect them had been exploiting them instead. Rebellion spread like wildfire through Council space. The Vegan Collective was the first to officially withdraw from the Council. Their representative, a insect-like creature named Clickwhistle, made the announcement in the same chamber where Jake Morrison had made his historic declaration. "We have learned the truth about Council justice," Clickwhistle said, his translator converting his chirping sounds into understandable words. "There is no justice for the weak. There is only exploitation disguised as protection." Within days, 17 more species announced their withdrawal from the Council. President Elena Martinez welcomed each one personally. Unlike the Council, which demanded tribute and submission, humanity offered genuine partnership. New allies were given access to advanced technology, fair trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The Free Space Alliance grew rapidly as species discovered what real cooperation looked like. Commander Rick Hayes led the human fleet that liberated the Altair system from Council occupation. The system's native species, the Altarians, had been fighting for independence for over a century. The Council had always claimed the rebellion was terrorist activity that threatened galactic stability. In reality, the Altarians just wanted to control their own resources and govern themselves. Rick's ships arrived as Council forces were preparing to bombardment civilian targets in retaliation for the latest uprising. The human intervention was swift and decisive. "Council ships, this is Commander Hayes of the Free Space Alliance," he transmitted. "You will cease fire immediately and withdraw from Altarian space." The Council commander's response was predictable. "This is none of your concern, human. The Council is dealing with terrorist activity." "The only terrorists I see are the ones preparing to attack civilians," Rick replied. "You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal." The Council fleet tried to fight. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, the surviving Council ships were fleeing toward the hyperspace jump point, while Altarian cities celebrated their freedom. The Altarians became the 23rd species to join the Free Space Alliance. On Centrum Prime, the fortress, world that housed the Council's main government, President Yalthor faced a crisis unlike anything in galactic history. Half the Council chamber was empty as species after species withdrew to join the humans. Those who remained were mostly the older, more powerful civilizations who had been running things for millennia. They were not willing to give up their privileged positions without a fight. "We cannot allow this human cancer to spread further," Yalthor declared to the reduced assembly. "Every species that joins them weakens us all." Councillor Vexithara, her political career in ruins but her pride intact, stood to address the chamber. "The humans have shown us what we really are," she said bitterly. "Not protectors of peace, but parasites feeding on the weak. They offer what? We only pretended to provide." "Then what do you suggest?" Yalthor demanded. Vexithara's black eyes glittered with hatred. "We use everything we have. Every weapon, every ship, every alliance. We crush humanity before they can corrupt the entire galaxy." The vote was close, but it passed. The Council committed itself to total war against humanity and the Free Space Alliance. It would be the last mistake they ever made. Within hours of the vote, every major Council world found itself cut off from hyperspace communications. Their military bases went dark one by one as human agents activated sabotage programs that had been waiting for decades. The war the Council wanted was about to begin, but they would discover that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they joined the galactic community. The final reckoning was at hand. Captain Nicole Stevens, now commanding an Alliance exploration fleet, led missions into previously unexplored regions of the galaxy. Her ships carried not weapons of conquest, but tools of discovery. When they encountered new species, they offered friendship and partnership rather than demands for submission. The galaxy was vast, and there was room for everyone who was willing to work together. As the anniversary celebration continued, Jake Morrison reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The galaxy had expected humanity to rage and burn when they abandoned diplomacy. Instead, humanity had done something far more dangerous. They had offered a better alternative. The Council's greatest fear had been realized not through conquest, but through obsolescence. The species they had dismissed as too primitive for civilized. Society had founded a new civilization that made the old one irrelevant. In the end, the war had been won not by Captain Nicole Stevens, now commanding an Alliance exploration fleet, led missions into previously unexplored regions of the galaxy. Her ships carried not weapons of conquest, but tools of discovery. When they encountered new species, they offered friendship and partnership rather than demands for submission. The galaxy was vast, and there was room for everyone who was willing to work together. As the anniversary celebration continued, Jake Morrison reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The galaxy had expected humanity to rage and burn when they abandoned diplomacy. Instead, humanity had done something far more dangerous. They had offered a better alternative. The Council's greatest fear had been realized not through conquest, but through obsolescence. The species they had dismissed as too primitive for civilized. Society had founded a new civilization that made the old one irrelevant. In the end, the war had been won not by